You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Senate President Don Harmon, fresh off of a condensed legislative session in this election year. Maybe you've heard. In January 2023, will Democrats still control the Illinois Senate?
Yes, they will.
Will they still have a supermajority?
I believe we will, yes.
To what extent? This year is a little bit different. I've never covered a session like it for many reasons. One of them is that every senator is facing re-election this year. That only happens once a decade.
That's right.
To what extent did that change the politics or influence which bills passed, which ideas didn't have momentum?
This was an unusual session. Obviously, the rescheduled primary date and the census delay that had triggered that impacted our scheduling, as well as the construction project here at the Capitol. We'll be vacating the Senate and the Senate offices shortly for that project to begin. I don't think it changed the flavor of what we did. We focused on the things that mattered. We passed another responsible, balanced budget. We were able to build tax relief in for folks facing inflationary pressures at home. And we were able to tackle some critical public safety initiatives along the way.
So you don't think the election year, everybody feeling that pressure of facing the voters, changed anything?
I think we're proud of the record we've built up over the last 4 years. Again, this is the fourth balanced budget in a row. We've gotten two credit rating.
At the end of the year, if you look at COGFA's reports, the money in and money out, the first two didn't end up being balanced at the end of the year.
I would say that they were balanced budgets when we passed them. Certainly a far cry from the 2 years where we didn't have a budget at all. And we were rewarded with two credit rating upgrades from two rating agencies. I think people believe Illinois is on the right path.
And the comptroller predicts there may be more credit upgrades in the near future. On the fiscal responsibility, it looks like Democrats are trying to seize that mantle. For years, maybe decades, I don't know, perhaps since the Reagan years, Republicans have said, we know the economy better than the other side. We know fiscal responsibility. Have Democrats been sensitive to that rhetoric or criticism, how real or perceived it is?
I think there's a sensitivity. I think you might remember Bill Clinton inherited a budget deficit and left with a surplus. I think Democrats have a long tradition of actually being responsible with taxpayer dollars, though Republicans have done a much better job of portraying themselves as the fiscal watchdogs. But I think our actions speak louder than their words, and our balanced budget this year is the best that I've seen in 20 years.
Just before, the week before all the budget passed and the direct relief and the tax breaks and all of those things that got most of the attention, Democrats held a press conference to sort of spike the football on the 5-yard line of this big unemployment insurance trust fund, if I can use that analogy. You got the easy stuff done. It's easy to take federal COVID dollars and spend it on a big portion of the deficit, but the hardest stuff is still undone. Is that, I mean, I don't think that will be addressed until after the election. Isn't that an example of tackling the tough problems, putting them off after the election?
Oh, not at all. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund is really a private insurance program paid for by the employers, negotiated with the employees. In the face of a $4 billion shortfall, we took the unprecedented step of, for the first time ever, putting taxpayer money into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to make the problem more manageable so that the system could solve its own problems, as it has done before.
But it's still not fixed all the way. There's still a massive deficit.
There is, but it's about the same scale as the deficit in 2008 after the recession then, and the system cured itself. We took the edge off. We made sure that it was within the range of manageable by, again, for the first time, putting taxpayer money into that to ease the burden on employers.
Isn't it still possible, if I heard the governor correctly, that there will still be extra unemployment insurance taxes on companies and perhaps the likelihood of lower unemployment benefits for workers to close that gap at some point in the future?
The way these gaps are always closed is through a negotiation between employers and employees. It's a combination of the premiums the employers pay to fund the system and the benefits the employees expect.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the issues Democrats said that we've shown fiscal responsibility. There were several others in paying down some of the backlogs of unpaid bills or in reducing the likelihood that the state would have to pay high interest rates, and those things have created a little extra breathing room in the budget. But there's also been the cost of living and crime. Those are big election year issues that we're hearing a lot about. First, before we get into some of the crime solutions, what do you think is causing the increase in crime?
You know, it's a problem we're seeing across the country. It's not unique to Illinois. It's not unique to Chicago, even though some of the political rhetoric would suggest so. We're seeing it all over, and I suspect when the history books are written, we're going to see some causal relationship coming out of the pandemic. I'm not sure what it is. I imagine it's more complicated than we might imagine right now.
Mm-hmm. People, you could imagine a lot. People were kicked out of their jobs, closed out from their schools, those things that kept them in their routine and control of their own lives. And without those things, and with added desperation, or you can see people turning to violence.
I think people understand that crime is a function of unemployment and the lack of opportunities. That doesn't mean they don't want real solutions in the short run, but I think they understand the systemic causes of it.
For many years, before you became Senate President, you advocated a safer Illinois through stricter gun laws. When you look at 2020's crime statistics, only one state bordering us had a higher violent crime rate, and that was Missouri. St. Louis has some complicated issues and one of the worst crime cities in the whole country. What does that tell you about, Illinois has stricter gun laws than most of our neighboring states and had higher violence during 2020 than most of the surrounding states. What does that tell you?
It tells me that a lot of people are buying their guns in Indiana and Missouri and Mississippi and bringing them into Illinois. It's something we've seen for decades. I wish we had more of a national presence to unify those laws to make sure that responsible gun owners have access to weapons, but criminals don't. But so long as our borders are open and Indiana guns can pour into Chicago and St. Louis, Missouri guns can pour into downstate Illinois, we're going to see the same problems.
How will you measure success on this issue of crime over the next year or two? There were some Republicans calling for tougher penalties, longer sentences, and some Democrats made the case, well, what good is a tougher penalty if you never solve the crime in the first place? They're stepping back from the sentence and looking at, let's just solve the thing. Are you confident that state police, local police will have a higher close rate on open cases a year or two from now?
I hope so, and we're trying to give them the tools to do so. You've really expressed the dichotomy well. We've tried tough on crime, stricter sentences, longer sentences for a long time, and it hasn't worked. I think that criminals respond to swift and certain consequences. And so if police have more resources to solve crimes and there's a more certain consequence, we'll be in a better position.
You sat with police widows this year. Some of them, their husbands, their spouses were killed by repeat offenders. I understand that could be a sensitive meeting, but can you share any details of what that meeting was like?
It was heartbreaking. It's hard to sit with people who have endured such grave loss, especially the loss that was in the service of all of us. I hope no one is ever in their shoes again, although I know someone will be.
When they walked out of there, or when they saw the end of your work in the end of session, do you think, was it your aim? Do you think that they are persuaded that Illinois Democrats have their back?
I hope so. I hope we're walking the walk. We funded police in this budget. We've authorized the state police to do 3 cadet classes for the first time, the largest recruiting ever. We've given local police departments more resources for cameras. We've expanded the use of highway cameras to track violent crimes in progress, to crack down on carjackings as well as other violent crimes. It's not something we can solve with a magic wand. I wish it were, but I hope that they believe we're doing our best.
One of the issues that they took issue with was the end of cash bail, which starts in January. You have one last crack at changing, modifying, altering the Safety Act, that controversial crime and public safety bill that passed in January of 2021. There are prosecutors in the Senate, some of them in your caucus, who look at the forcible felonies that would allow a person to be, would allow a court to lock a person up before their trial, and the other list of things that qualify for probation, a burglary, breaking into someone's car, these things you'd be let go. And the courts are kind of trying to figure all this out. They're a little bit confused. Do you want to see that language, that bill clarified before January?
I don't know that it needs to be, and I think people have turned this political argument on its head. Republicans have obviously seized on what they think is a winning rhetorical argument, but it doesn't fit with the facts. Today, in a world of cash bail, the most dangerous criminal who has enough money can leave the jail awaiting trial and go commit more crimes. We would like a model that evaluates each defendant based on their threat to a specific person or to the community. And judges should be able to hold people who are dangerous in jail awaiting trial.
Are Senate Democrats divided on this issue of crime? We saw some of that on the floor when it came to approving Governor Pritzker's Prisoner Review Board appointees.
I don't think divided is the right word. I think this is a complicated, nuanced issue, and people come with very different life experiences. We had broad support within our caucus for both the Black Caucus legislative pillars and the work we undertook this spring.
It's very interesting. I want to move to the cost of living. I know Democrats wanted to show compassion to this rise of how expensive it is to live in America and in Illinois. How much of a difference is it going to make to have a $50 direct check show up or $100 if you have a kid?
Well, it's not just that. It's a whole collection of tax breaks, and we're trying to get our arms around it. But we think for a typical family, this is going to be a benefit in the range of $500 to $700. That's impactful. It doesn't change the world, but we're trying to show that we understand the pain people are feeling in this inflationary era and giving them a little bit more. We balanced our state budget. We're trying to let them balance their household budgets.
I asked about the direct checks because that was not initially in Governor Pritzker's budget proposal. He suggested freezing the gas tax increase and suspending the grocery tax for a year. The General Assembly came back and said, we're going to slip in direct checks. Other states are sending bigger direct checks. They have bigger surpluses than Illinois does. Was that part of the calculation, that Illinois couldn't afford to have other states send direct checks out while we were sending none?
Oh, not at all, not at all. And some other states are sending smaller checks too. It seems to be a fairly consistent national buzz. At least a dozen or so states have or are considering doing it, and all different flavors. But we looked at it in combination. The governor came out with three things: the gas tax, the grocery tax, and also a direct check for property tax payers. But we recognize that for a single mom who takes the CTA and rents her apartment, she wouldn't get anything. We wanted to make sure that this was a child-centric, family-focused collection of tax relief. And by sending a check, a single mom with 3 kids would get $350. That's not going to change her world, but it's going to make a difference for her family.
It's a little lunch money, maybe a car payment, maybe more. Why does Illinois have a reputation for corruption?
There has been some bad behavior over the last several decades, perhaps longer. I don't know that it's unique to Illinois. There are certainly other parts of the country that have these sorts of episodes. I think it's part of a longstanding political culture that needs to change.
Your 2 sessions at the helm of the Senate, there have been a number of debates and ideas about different ways to reform and improve ethics and to better catch or prevent bad behavior. Which of those ideas have been your favorite?
Interestingly, one of the things I worked on for probably close to a decade that finally went into effect a year ago with our landmark ethics reform law was updating the statements of economic interest that we all file to reveal from where we earn money, from what assets we hold that might impact our decision making. Those are just being filed now. You may have seen in the news some local office holders are choosing to resign their offices rather than comply with the transparency law. I think that's illustrative of what's at stake here. We should be transparent. We shouldn't be afraid to tell people what our economic interests are. We'll evaluate that after the first wave of filings to see what we got right. If there are things we need to fix, we're happy to fix them.
And we want to know, the public deserves to know, whether or not, as one FBI transcript put it, whether or not that lawmaker's got a baloney company somewhere that's accepting a check for some thing they voted on in Springfield. The House passed a measure to respond to this pressure of ethics to cap a leadership term limit, a Senate president or a House Speaker, at 10 years. It died in the Senate. Why not? Or why not approve of that idea?
We've already approved that. It's in our
rules.
It's in our Senate rules.
But it's not in the law.
Agreed, but I think we have an issue. It either needs to be in the chamber rules or in the Constitution. And I think that's something we'd be willing to entertain, but I don't think a law allows us to supersede the stated constitutional requirements for office.
And the Constitution is what empowers the rulemaking in this chamber? Is that what you're...
The chambers are free to set their own rules, but the law is in that middle ground where it can't conflict with the Constitution.
Do you hope to still be Senate President 10 years from now?
I have served for 2 very unusual sessions, 3 I guess, but COVID time is funny. I'm very pleased to have this office, and as long as my members want me to do that, but I don't plan to be here for decades.
Decades, plural. A smart person I know said I don't do predictions. So I will, before I let you go though, I do want to ask you about this because it's interesting, and maybe this is inside baseball. Some of our viewers may find it interesting, others may find it very pedantic and boring, and I'm sorry for them, to them for that. A lot of chatter in this building has been that since the new leadership changes, Madigan's gone, Cullerton's gone, they're trying to get a feel for which chamber works in which way. And correct me if you think this is wrong, some people feel if you want to get an idea through, it'll fly through the House, but it'll die in the Senate. Is that how you want it to be? Do you think the Senate as the upper chamber is more the saucer to the piping hot cup of tea as it is in Congress, or is that by design?
Now, I appreciate your reference to that because that is the constitutional design of the two chambers. The House, being larger with shorter terms, is designed to respond to the more immediate passions of the voters, and the Senate is intended to be a little bit more thoughtful and deliberative. Now, I would say the Senate has a long history, though, of advancing good, thoughtful ideas, and for years they might die in the House. Today, I think we're each trying to figure out how to best advance good public policy, and it requires both chambers to agree.
All right, Senate President Don Harmon, I think we can probably talk for a while longer, but we're running out of time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're back in just a moment.